Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Primesberger, Editor Emeritus of eWEEK.com. Thanks for joining us today for this latest segment of eWeek eSpeaks. This is a series of informal conversations with IT thought leaders from every corner of the business. Our interviewee today is Rick Larkin. Rick is Director of North America Pre-Sales for NetBrain, a very interestingly named company. So, Rick, welcome.
Thank you, Chris, for the time.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about your role there, and I guess you're expanding your sales presence in the world too, huh?
Yeah, no. So I joined NetBrain about a little over 5 years ago in January of 2016. Started out as as SE, then I was kind of an overlay. I was sort of a, help save a deal, win a deal, whatever, travel anywhere. And then I wound up taking over the North American pre-sales engineering team. And prior to that, I've been in the game for over 30 years. Got a couple degrees in electrical engineering, and then did a lot of work in government contracting. And then in the late 90s, I did a lot of work in the financial space. That was really fun. I'm sure you remember those days. They couldn't build data centers and trading floors quick enough, so I did some time at Fidelity and State Street. Then had a nice run at MIT before joining NetBrain.
Okay,
I've been blessed with a great career. Yeah.
quite a background, yeah. Tell us a little bit about what NetBrain does. It's a software company, but it automates networking. Is that kind of a general headline or what?
Yeah, it's funny. We call ourselves a network automation company, and people are like, oh, what is that, right? And so I'm a network guy from way back when, and a lot of today's networks are still very manual. You know what I mean? It's we use our computers, we log into devices, we sense, make stuff, data flies by, and they're very complicated as well. And with emerging software-defined stuff and public cloud, networks are getting even more and more complicated. So what we provide is visibility. You can turn us on and we'll discover everything in your on-prem, in the building, your software-defined stuff, your public cloud. We'll find all that and sense make it. And we have this really cool dynamic mapping feature that our customers love. It looks like a Visio. I'm sure you remember the good old days of Visios. And the people who have to create and maintain Visio documentation is just a nightmare, right? So the fact that we automate that completely is one really big kill use case. And that helps for compliance use cases, right? Of security controls or even just best practices. And then once we find everything in the network, we have a really nice way to automate troubleshooting. So again, troubleshooting very manual, box by box, and sometimes you don't even know what to do. No one's an expert at every technology or vendor. Certainly I'm not. And so our technology helps guide people, and basically, we have one of our largest customers is a large consulting firm, and they use our automated runbook technology, and they claim that their typical, outage time for party 2, party 3 issues is like 4 hours. And just using our runbook technology, they got it down to 15 minutes, right? So that mean time to repair or mean time to innocence is really important. So that's a killer use case for us as well.
Yeah, well, that's impressive for sure. We've been writing a lot about, well, networking for sure with our networking analyst and writer, Zeus Caravala. You've probably heard of Zeus. He's pretty well known. He's really one of the best that I've run across, and I enjoy working with him. And he's written about this a lot. But we've been writing about something called observability, which is an older concept. But it seems to be coming back into favor with some of this new software and some of these new services that we have. And observability goes, way beyond just monitoring. Would NetBrain be considered an observability tool or not?
I think we have a play there. I know a lot of the APM and NPM vendors, right, are talking the observability game these days. But I would say one of the things that makes us unique is, you look at those traditional SNMP based 24/7 monitoring, they're checking basic stuff, right? Up, down, green, red, right? Utilization. But a lot of the newer stuff, software defined and cloud, they don't even have SNMP MIBs, so you need to make an API call, you got to get different data sets, and you got to sense make it in a different way. So what we're really good at is not just understanding the configuration of all the network stuff, but then the state and condition, and that sort of leads into one of our newest features in our latest release called intent-based automation, which basically, some people look at a network as just a bunch of boxes that are cabled together. There's a lot going on. There's thousands and thousands of KPIs in any given switch or router or firewall. So we just help, basically automate all of that, the configuration, the state, the condition, as almost like a proactive automation solution, if you will.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, I was going to ask about that. You beat me to it. The whole idea of intent-based automation is a very interesting, title to look at. How does can you answer me this? How does no and low code software development or no code uh, development fit into this? Is this tool NetBrain able to be used by line of business people in different parts of the business to fine tune what they're trying to do?
Absolutely. And I think that's also something that we've improved in our most recent release, this whole idea of no code, low code. So if you're a network operator or a security guy or a cloud person, you kind of know how to configure and work with those devices. So you just do what you normally do. And a lot of our automation just kind of builds itself, right? So it's kind of copy and paste, it's really point, click, go. You don't need to understand Python, you don't need to look at these very, complicated scripts. So we have the ability now to build parsers, almost whip them up on the fly, and runbooks kind of build themselves just by using NetBrain as the interface. As you go around the network and troubleshoot this and troubleshoot that, boom, you have a runbook built that you can go ahead and reuse or what have you. So we try to make it easy for sure. Yep. And I think we're doing a better and better job of that.
Good. Can you outline just kind of a high level use case of somebody using NetBrain inside a company to fix a problem?
Sure. So a classic one is, there's a lot of streaming media. I mean, as we're on this Zoom call, right? So, and then once people are back in the building, whether it be like trading floors for financials or digital signage or, even videos, a lot of that requires technologies that people know as quality of service and IP SLA service level agreements. And so you need to make sure that every box that traffic flies through is configured with a proper, service policy. And so a common thing that we see is this thing called config drift, right? Where over time, in every place is different. Is it 3, 5, 7 changes before the device isn't quite the way it was per the intent, right? Or per the recommended design and reference, if you will. And so what we can do is we can verify and validate that these things are not only, again, configured properly, but then also in the proper state and condition. Think of like a pair of firewalls, right? Depending on how that's configured, whether it's load balanced or primary and secondary, you want to not just know that the configuration is like the firewall rules and hackles, but is it ready if it has to fail over, right? Is it in a proper state? So things like that are very common use cases, and these are things that again are complicated, depending on the vendor, requires a lot of expertise, and we can codify network operators' knowledge, and so it can be reused by other people over and over again.
Right. Okay, so NetBrain also it's a SaaS service, correct? It can be used across different clouds, including AWS and Azure, and you can also use it sounds like, in a private cloud or in a server in your own data center, correct? So there's a lot of different choices.
Yeah, so actually we're still just a software vendor, so we typically deliver, people deploy on-prem, or they can deploy in the cloud. But what's interesting is we've been talking about it, but what we are doing is we have partners, large partners, well-known large technology partners, and they'll stick NetBrain in Amazon and offer NetBrain as a service, right? So that's sort of a growing business case for us, which is wonderful.
Well, okay, thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate it. That's important for somebody who's thinking about buying it. What's you got a new version 10.0 that's out. What's the most important new feature or features in this version as opposed to the previous version?
Yep. So I'd say that the two big things in version 10 is, first, we have support for public cloud. So we now have visibility into Amazon and Azure, and then we plan to have Google added at the end of the year, right, later this year. So I think cloud observability is important. And then the second is this intent-based automation. Our CEO is very innovative, and we have a number of patents and some of the, automation components that we have. And we think this intent-based automation could definitely be a game changer. The ability to proactively find problems, fix problems before they become business impacting, right? Nobody wants to deal with that. So I'd say intent-based automation and then support for the public cloud are the two big upgrades or features. Yeah.
Okay, so there's obviously, a certain amount of, AI involved in this, right? Built in. And did NetBrain build its own engine for this, or did you get it from open source or partner with somebody for this, or what?
Yep. No, it's all homegrown. We have, for a company that I think we're nearing 500 people, we have almost 200 engineers, right? So very, very technology focused, driven company. And so, yeah, no, we like to roll our own. And I think we shipped our first product in '07. And if you look at the code base, I mean, it's on par with like an operating system in terms of like Windows or Linux, right? There's so many features and capabilities that we've established over the years.
Okay. How would you describe your customer base? Are you stronger in some verticals than others, or are you pretty horizontal, or what?
Yeah, great question. So I'd say we are pretty horizontal. We tend to do best in the enterprise or large companies, right? Because the bigger the network, the more complicated, that's a tougher problem, and there's a bigger need. So we do really well with global, multinational companies. What's been trending lately, we've done really well in the pharmaceutical area, with everything going on in COVID-19. Just about all the vendors that are in the news are using us one way or another. We've had a lot of success in the financial space as well. Obviously, when I was at Fidelity and State Street, I could point to a Cat 5 and say that's $1 billion a minute Cat 5, right? So those kinds of people that have large networks, complicated networks, things that have business, IT is business critical. That's where we play well.
Very good. So now, if somebody wanted to find you on the net, it would be netbrain.com. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we have both netbrain.com and netbraintech.com. Yeah. So I think we finally got the netbrain.com URL a couple of years ago. They both work.
Sometimes you have to be patient and wait, don't you? Something like that.
Yeah.
All right, Rick, listen, thank you very much for your time and for the overview of the company and your background. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure our readers do too.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your time as well.
Sure. Rick Larkin, Director of North America Pre-Sales for NetBrain in Boston, Massachusetts. Thanks very much for being on eSpeaks.
Thank you, Chris.
And for everybody following along to the end, have a great rest of your eWEEK. Thanks for joining us on eWEEK eSpeaks. Go to eWEEK.com to hear more conversations with IT thought leaders.